always been passionate about feeding people. Ask my family, ask my friends, they'll tell you I'm always trying to feed them.
I'm just going to move this a little bit. Keep talking.
Thank you. I love gathering people, friends, family, and even strangers to my table to share a meal. I was raised to bring food to every gathering. Yes, I am a native Minnesotan. You don't show up empty-handed. You bring food to those who are welcoming new lives and you bring food to those who've just said goodbye to dear loved ones. I even gave new meaning to the term high school sweetheart, because I baked goodies for a certain guy every Friday for our entire senior year of high school. No lie, ask my husband. He married me 5 years later. It worked. Trust me, it worked. I didn't grow up in a particularly religious family. I never connected the act of feeding people to practicing my faith. I thought church happened within these walls, that they happened during prayer before dinner and prayer before bed. I fed people because it was the right thing to do, and it made me feel good. It was only as an adult, as I grew in my faith, did I realize that feeding those who are hungry is the expression of God's love. My role in establishing feeding area children together was a natural extension of my talents and passion. It's also a role God prepared for me for several years. I just didn't know it. I felt a great sense of loss after leaving my career in the food industry. We moved from California to Minnesota so that my husband could pursue his career and that I would stay home with our children. I prayed for direction during these very dark days, for something to give me greater purpose. I didn't feel that being a stay-at-home parent was my calling in life. And then I prayed for forgiveness, as the guilt of wanting more when I had so much was crushing. I prayed for God to tell me that moving here wasn't the worst decision I'd ever made in my life. It is Minnesota. This is my third time living here. I didn't know what I was getting into. While I prayed, God brought me this loving church. He brought me to that door, and the second I stepped inside, I knew that this was my home. He brought me a family of bell ringers. So you may recognize me because I ring bells passionately here. He brought me this family of bell ringers, of people who stand behind me. He also put in my path new friends and new family, and people who would support me in whatever I wanted to do. He blessed me with 3 boys that changed the way I love. I never knew people could love so deeply before becoming a parent. I just couldn't see his love for me. I couldn't see God's love for me and the work that he was doing through the fog of my own thoughts and plans and desires. Then in December of 2016, I saw a post on Facebook on the PTA page from a mom who was saying, "Hey, we'd like to pay off the student lunch debt at our kids' school. Would anyone like to help contribute?" And so I said, "I'll help. We'll contribute. Let me know if I can help you in any other way." And then a month went by, nothing kind of happened. Then one day, a link to the crowdsourcing page came up. I donated. The student lunch debt was paid off in a matter of hours because so many parents donated. And I patted myself on the back and said, "Oh, that was a good deed for the day," and I moved on. The woman who organized this was currently very pregnant with her 4th child. And so in between paying off the student lunch debt and sending me the next message, she had given birth to her son. And in that time, she'd gone to school. She regularly would eat lunch with her children. She has a child with a severe allergy. Teachers were saying, thank you for doing this. And then they were telling her stories about the students at Madison, about how some students come to school hungry every day, that they can't concentrate because they're just too hungry. The teachers shared that they were buying food to keep in their classrooms to supplement the meals that these students were receiving at school. Some were packing baggies of cereal and handing them out as children were getting in the bus at the end of the day. We paid off the student lunch debt, but it didn't help in the way it was intended. Because in District 742, every child gets fed the exact same meal, whether they can pay for it or not. And the principal at Madison summed it up best when she said, "We know our students are eating at school. The question is if they are eating at home." Reading Sarah's messages left me in tears. My heart hurt. A child should not go hungry in this land of abundance. And then I thought, what if these were my children? How would my heart ache for my boys? How would this burden weigh on me? And would I walk this path alone? A very ugly cry later. This immense sense of calm and peace settled over me. I knew that I needed to know more about hunger in our community and in our schools. I needed to come and see the truth. Sarah, Marcus, Helen, and I, we weren't fact yet. We were just friends. We had just started our friendship. We talked to teachers, we talked to administrators, we talked to community leaders, and we visited charities far and wide. We made road trips to see other programs that fed students at school. We asked who in our community could help us feed our children. And what we heard was the problem was too big. Just as in John 6:5, when Jesus looked up and he saw the great crowd coming towards him, and he asked Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" We heard that there wasn't enough money. As in verse 7, when Philip answered, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough food for each one to have a bite. We heard, we don't know how to distribute food to these students. The problem is so big. How far will what we have go among so many? I kept trying to make excuses about why I wasn't the right person, that this wasn't for me. This problem was too big for me. My life was too busy. My children were too young. My youngest was 6 months at the time. That we were going to move soon. Moving to Minnesota was a 5-year plan, and we had just started year 6. That it was time for me to move back to a southern climate and return to my career. But despite these reasons, I knew God was calling me to this work, that feeding children to help families was why I was called to this place. We became a nonprofit 6 months later, and we quickly launched a food pantry and a backpack food program called Fact Packs. Our Fact Packs provide shelf-stable and child-friendly meals to students about 104 days out of every school year. We also provide food for families through our break box distribution, which occurs twice a year before winter and midwinter breaks. In the past 18 months, we have grown from serving 50 students at one school per week to serving over 200 students a week across 3 schools, with over 80 students on our wait lists. The need is so great in our community. But let me tell you, so is God's presence. I see his presence in the face of the children that we serve. They are his children. All kids are our kids. and they are deeply, deeply loved. I see God in their thankful hearts and in their words. Not long ago, a little girl walked up to Sarah while she was taking the totes up to classrooms, and she whispered, "I see you. I know what you do. Thank you." He is in the excited squeals that children give at seeing fresh fruit, going home with them over long breaks. And they're in their smiles as they pick out their favorite foods. I see God in the love of teachers. Our Breakbox program is one that we send 25 to 30 pounds of fresh produce and pantry staples home with families, as well as setting out 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of donated food to help families through about 22 days of school break a year. We make about 150 of these boxes each time we do this event. And we invite families to a one-night giveaway. They don't have to register. We don't ask questions. We offer food, words of encouragement, and a lot of hugs. We have a team of teachers that volunteer to deliver to these families. And one of the most memorable times that I'd seen is we pulled up in front of this house, and it was near dark. It was our last delivery of the night, and this little girl ran straight out the front door of this house. Now, it's December, and she is barefoot. And she's running, and her teacher bends down and just picks her up in her arms. And this little girl exclaims, "I knew you would come. I knew you wouldn't forget about me." She had waited all day for us to come with this box of food. And her teacher looked at her and said, "I love you. I would never forget about you." I see God's presence in the tearful hugs of parents. Asking for help is so emotional, and many feel so ashamed. But they only find comfort in knowing that we don't judge and that we'll offer love and lots of hugs. I see God in the number of individuals that volunteer their time to pack. We've seen some of these pictures of our pack here at Bethlehem. Just like breaking bread together brings people closer, the act of packing food for our families, it brings people of all faiths and backgrounds and cultures to the same table for the same reason. There is a lot of love in those bags. I see God in those who financially support us. They share their treasures to benefit some of the most vulnerable in our community. That is a priceless gift. And I see God in this place and in all of you. Feeding Area Children Together is here because of your support and your desire to be the church in our community. We truly are feeding area children together.